Under the radiant blood moon, blood-soaked demon corpses lay strewn across the ground, their foul aura permeating the air, which was thick with dust. A fierce battle was nearing its end, and the hero seemed to have reached his limit. One of his swords had been struck away, and his legs could no longer support him, his entire body on the verge of collapsing. Refusing to yield his silhouette, stood defiant, using his remaining sword as a crutch, his chest bared in stark contrast to the swordsman's struggle. The ferocious demon was utterly smug, flaunting its power. From high above, silently gazing down at its struggling prey, the hero must have fought desperately before being pushed to such a desperate state. Volha Seonja laughed maniacally, her dark eyes glinting with a blood-red hue. A striking flame-shaped insignia emblazoned on her forehead. She seemed to be at the pinnacle of the battle, controlling everything, her triumphant, self-satisfied smile betraying no fear as she savored the moment. Her words, full of provocation, were slowly articulated as she summoned a sphere of dark energy. "You are worthy of the title Sword Emperor. However, that reputation of yours ends today." Along with a deafening shriek, she raised her hands high, channeling all her energy into the sphere in those final moments of life and death. He slowly raised his hand to wipe away the blood clinging to the corner of his mouth. "Damn it! I let my guard down, but because I have achieved my original purpose. So kill me without a hint of fear and refusing to abandon the pride of a swordsman." The Sword Emperor was ready to accept death, yet still did not forget to utter a challenge, his face full of defiance as he awaited what was to come. Volha Seonja, pouring all her strength into it, hurled the sphere towards the Sword Emperor, which shot directly towards its target. At that moment she pressed her lips tightly together, her eyes glaring fiercely at the hateful demon. Boom! A massive explosion resounded, followed by tremors and shockwaves. Sand and rocks were scattered in all directions, and raging fire illuminated the entire dark space. Her arrogant expression and contemptuous smile were terrifying. Surely no first swordmaster could have survived that last move. She merely let out a cold snort, feigning indifference. But the smile on her lips, which had barely bloomed, quickly vanished. When a dazzling sword gradually revealed itself after the explosion, smoke still billowing as the scene slowly became clear. Before the Sword Emperor now stood a young man in a defensive stance, his sword raised high, blocking all damage from the energy attack power emanated from his entire body, and his eyes, with their deadly gaze, made anyone facing Yeon tremble. The two syllables, Mugong, were uttered with surprise from Gong Bak. "Brother, I apologize for being late from now on. I will handle everything." Sweat streamed down Yeon Mugong's face. I could even see traces of the previous explosion on him. Power continuously radiated from his body. No sooner had Yeon Mugong finished speaking than he launched himself high into the air, the powerful leap seeming to tear apart the ground to the Sword Emperor's astonishment. With the support of his close brother, and already exhausted Nangong Baek could only retreat backward at this point. "I'm entrusting everything to you." Under the mystical red moon, Yeon Mugong soared high, aiming for the demon and charging towards it, creating a scene both terrifying and magnificent. Volha Seonja, terrified, quickly asked, "Who are you?" "I've come here to hack you to pieces." Volha Seonja, with a fiery gaze. Yeon Mugong surged forward. Clasping his sword with both hands, he boldly declared his name. "I am Duan Yue, the Sword Wanderer." The situation had now reversed. Gone was her previous arrogance. Volha Seonja now looked diminutive before Mugong's powerful sword strike under the dazzling light radiating from him. She couldn't even manage to defend herself. She could only stand there staring blankly. The smooth sword strike descended, slicing her body into many small pieces. The attack's power was immense, like a roaring fire dragon illuminating a vast expanse of space. Accompanied by Volha Seonja's sky-shattering scream, Nangong Baek's triumphant smile along with Yeon Mugong's majestic finishing pose. Her body burned gradually, vanishing from the human realm. That day, 9 streaks of sword chi shot down from the heavens. The sky ceased its blinding orange glow, gradually softened, and then turned blue, returning peace to the clouds. Amidst the remnants of that life and death battle, the sturdy figure of the swordsman Nangong faintly appeared. Fading memories bring us back to the present 6 years later at Arrogant Dragon Manor. A young man was being reprimanded by a female elder. Her expression was utterly fierce as she yelled, "Don't be so weak. Get up right now. Didn't I tell you that an important guest is coming today? The young man stammered. It's true, Mother told me about this, but he hadn't even finished speaking when the female elder yelled, interrupting him. You're ignoring my command to sweep the backyard thoroughly, making sure not a single leaf is left, aren't you? No matter how the young man tried to explain, she paid no attention, continuously scolding him. You're ignoring me because I'm not your birth mother, aren't you? The young man shook his head. No, I'm not. The female elder continued to question. You're not. If this order came from that mother who abandoned you the moment you were born, you wouldn't ignore it, would you? The young man tried to explain. No, ma'am, the female elder continued. Well, then if your father, who's been stuck in a room for the past 6 years, said it, you would have listened, wouldn't you? The young man once again stammered. No, ma'am, the female elder angrily retorted. Is that all you can say now? You're defying me, aren't you? Today I have to teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Far away from behind a corner wall, 3 children witnessed everything. But instead of intervening to protect their brother, 2 of them laughed gleefully. They incessantly chuckled, even pointing out the scene to their older brother and mocking. Ah, brother, look at him. He's so scared he can't even lift his head. He looks just like a turtle. In contrast to his siblings, Yon Mubaek wore a thoughtful, pensive expression, his gaze sharp, his face serious, as if burdened by many thoughts he couldn't express. He seemed to separate himself from the gloating and mockery of his younger siblings. At that moment, the Nangong family's entourage was on their way to arrogant Dragon Manor. Laughter echoed everywhere even after 6 years. This place hasn't changed at all. Someone in the group exclaimed, Wow, we've come all this way. We finally get to meet Father Yeon's only sworn brother. Uncle Yeon Nangong replied, That's right. We're almost at arrogant Dragon Manor, so make sure your attire is neat and tidy at this point. Noticing her daughter's absence, Madame Jung Ha-un asked in confusion. My lord, but why haven't we seen our daughter yet? She fleetingly caught sight of long black hair swaying in the wind, a small earring gently swaying with it. Nangong Baek replied, Ayon said she felt stifled, so she climbed onto the roof of the carriage as if disbelieving her ears. Madame Nangong shrieked, What I told her not to do, that Nangong Yon get down here right now. What if you fall and get hurt? Jung Ha-un leaned out the window calling out, Daughter Yon Nangong, Yon get down here right now. In contrast to the madam's eagerness, the palace master cheerfully laughed. Just leave her be, it's nothing new. Is it still worried and concerned for his daughter? The madam said, Oh, you really should not spoil her like that. At this moment, the eldest young master, Nangong Chun, also spoke up to reassure her. Do not worry too much, mother. With her martial arts skills, Yeon will not be injured. More importantly, please tell me about Uncle Yeon. He laughed loudly and said he's truly so strong that even father, who is known as the Sword Emperor, had to acknowledge his strength, did he? Sir Nangong Chun was a little surprised that his son brought up this topic. Fleeting memories of his old brother resurfaced. He was very strong, placing a hand on his chin. He began to recall 6 years ago the martial arts he used was certainly the most perfect sword art in the world. If it were not for Yeonmu Gong, I would not be alive today. The battle from years ago once again appeared. The image of Yeonmu Gong coming to the rescue all those years ago was still vividly clear in his mind. His Gu Cheon sword art can certainly be comparable to the high-level techniques of our Nangong Chun family. The proud smile when mentioning his old friend was clearly visible on Nangong Chun's face. Unable to believe his ears, Nangong Chun exclaimed, He is that strong, is he? Then why is not his martial arts famous throughout the land? Well, that is because he abandoned it and did not pass it down to anyone. It is best I tell you now. Make sure you engrave this in your heart so you do not say anything offensive about him. The image of the Duan Yue sword wanderer now appeared vividly. He had 2 wives, the first madam and the second madam, and he especially loved the second madam. Witnessing her husband's intimate affection for his second wife caused jealousy in Baek Mi-ju's heart. But unfortunately, the second madam passed away after giving birth 6 years ago. After that, he lost all will to live in this world with the sudden departure of the one he loved deeply. Yeonmu Gong almost lost himself, no longer caring to live. Sir Nangong Chun also learned more about his brother's situation. After that, I heard he locked himself in the second madam's room, and that is why I came to find him, to somehow persuade him to come out of that room. Nangong Chun Baek also added, That is also why, When we are at Waryeong Manor, do not mention his second madam for their benefit. It is best to act as if you do not know anything about it. Have you understood the image of Yeon Mugong with lifeless, hollow eyes, sunken cheeks? Just a glimpse was enough for people to realize how heartbroken he was. Chun heard this and only replied, "Yes, I will engrave it in my heart." Returning to Waryeong Manor, while Baek Mi-ju had not yet finished her outburst with Yeonjok. Ha! There were frantic shouts of "Madam, Madam" commotion everywhere, which annoyed her, and she roared, "What is all the commotion about at this moment?" The guard rushed in, breathless, reporting, "The master has come out of his room." Hearing that news, Baek Mi-ju, with an unperturbed expression, asked again, "Really, he really came out of that room, did he?" The guard quickly reported the situation. Yes, he just heard the report that the Nangong Chun family's carriage had entered the village, and he came out immediately. Now he is on his way to greet them on the cruel woman's hand. The little boy's blood was still visible. Without hesitation, the guard offered a cloth to his mistress, who slowly wiped away the smeared blood on her hands. She gritted her teeth and said, even if I begged him, he would not set foot out yet. As soon as he heard the news of his sworn brother, he left the room like that. Even though he ignored his own flesh and blood for 6 long years, he makes the effort to greet his sworn brother. Does he, perhaps? This was not the first time she had abused Jeok-ha like this. The guard even stepped forward to bring her a handkerchief. Shifting her gaze towards the boy, she did not forget to mock him, thinking about it. Now, you finally get to see your father for the first time in your life. Do you at this moment? Jeok-ha was beaten to within an inch of his life. His breath, shallow consciousness, fading, utterly pathetic. But there was no pity left in her eyes. Her cold expression and blood-stained hands truly sent shivers down one's spine. But you would not think of meeting him in that dirty state of yours, would you? Her words were like sharp, threatening blades full of menace. Even with his last breath, the boy struggled to get up, tears streaming down his entire body. Trembling, unable to stand, he still obediently replied, I promise I will not let father catch me. Good. Finally, you understand how things work here. You know where you need to go. Right at this moment. She was still wiping away the blood, looking down at the boy struggling to stand beside him, were puddles of splattered blood. With a disdainful look, she softly said, If you do not want to disgrace your family, then it is best not to let others see your dirty state. You know what will happen to yourself if you are too comfortable just because I am not watching you. Do you? She turned her back, discarding the handkerchief soaked with the boy's blood, her face still full of disgust. The boy was now able to stand, his entire body still trembling. He replied, Yes, I will reflect on my actions. In contrast to the cruelty she showed him with her own children, she stroked their heads and patted their shoulders, saying, My dear sons and daughters, are you ready to welcome your uncle? The children happily replied, Yes. That warm, loving scene was in complete contrast to the boy's desolate loneliness. Without hesitation, he hurried away. Looking at that small back, Yeon Mu-baek seemed to be lost in thought. Baek Mi-ju placed one hand on Mu-baek's shoulder, and with the other caressed his face, dotingly saying, My darling Mu-baek. As for Mu-baek, he turned his gaze back to his mother, politely replying, Yes, mother. Baek Mi-ju gave a sinister smile carefully, instructing her son, Today, you have a very important mission. You will meet Nangong Chun, Yeon uncle's daughter. You must make sure to be friendly and treat her well. Her face instantly turned malicious, her eyes gleaming with ambition, her teeth clenched. The hand on Mu-baek's shoulder also tightened. The sweet, gentle voice from before vanished, replaced by a terrifying, sinister tone. You understand what I am saying. Do you? Yes, mother. I will engrave it in my heart. In Mu-baek's eyes, there was determination and resolve. At that moment, Mi-ju's hand gently caressed his face. A long while later, in front of Waryeong Manor, Yeon Mu-gong reunited with Nangong Chun-baek. The two warmly greeted each other. Nangong Chun-baek began. Yeon Mu-gong, why do you look like this? Are you all right, Yeon Mu-gong? Then spoke up. I truly have no face to meet you again. I am truly sorry that I have not come to find you all this time. Nangong Chun-baek revealed. I cannot believe you would say such things. I was so surprised to hear about you. making Yon Mugong feel a little ashamed. It seems my incompetence has caused you concern, not letting the conversation become somber. Nangong Chunbaek immediately replied, "It is all right. Now we have met each other incidentally." Nangong Chun also introduced his family to Mugong. "Oh, this is my wife and children." Madam Nangong Chun then slowly spoke. "I have heard much about you. I am Yung Ha-un." Next was her eldest son. "I am Nangong Chun." Both bowed respectfully as etiquette dictated. This is Uncle Yon. Nangong Chun looked at the person in front of him and thought to himself. The man with uncut, unkempt beard and hair spoke up in greeting. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Sister Ha-yun. Chun, you have grown so big at this moment I could clearly see Mugong's appearance, his beard, long, his hair unkempt, his face, haggard, his eyes dark and hollow, so gaunt that he was skin and bones returning to Nangong Chun's thoughts about the uncle he just met. I heard he has not left his room for 6 years. He looks so emaciated, so different from what I imagined truly. If one only heard about his glorious past achievements, it would be too difficult to imagine that someone once so majestic and imposing could be in such a state now." At this moment, Ha-un gently covered her mouth and smiled. "I have truly heard so much about you. I am truly happy to finally meet you." Nangong Chun was a little surprised by his mother's enthusiastic attitude. Perhaps Chun had worried too much. "This is my second child, Nangong Chunyon. Oh my God, the young lady has disappeared again." Just as he was about to introduce his little princess, the entire Nangong Chun family suddenly realized Nangong Chunyon had run off somewhere. Ha-yun could only give an awkward laugh. "I am sorry, our young lady sometimes disappears without a trace like that." Nangong Chunbaek covered his face with a helpless expression, while Chun looked around anxiously searching for his sister. Mugong also laughed loudly. "It is all right, she is at the age where she loves to play anyway." At this moment, a voice spoke up. It was Baek Mi-ju. She laughed warmly, but did not forget to subtly hint. "That is right, our fourth child also keeps hiding and not showing her face at all. But husband, are you not going to introduce me and our children?" Causing Yon Mugong to turn his head to look, his eyes held a profound affection that could not yet be revealed, but also could not be ignored. Yon Mugong then introduced, "I would like to introduce my wife and children." At this moment the woman appeared, gentle, smiling sweetly and saying, "I am Baek Mi-ju. You must all be tired from your long journey. Please come in and rest quickly." "That is right, please come in and rest." Mugong also added, "Let us do that." Yon Nangong Chunbaek also replied accordingly, and everyone entered as invited. At this moment, Mi-ju turned and looked at Mu-baek with a sinister gaze. She bent down and gently said to her son, "Mu-baek, go check around our manor and find Nangong Chunyon. You must leave a deep impression on her." The corners of her mouth slightly curled up, her eyes holding cunning. She emphasized the words, "Understand." Mu-baek immediately obeyed, replying, "Yes, mother." Time slowly passed. It was no longer early. Twilight had gradually fallen, dyeing the landscape a pleasant golden-orange hue. However, behind the manor, in an unfrequented area, a young boy was still kneeling, his hands raised high, his body trembling incessantly. It was Yeon Jeok-ha. His entire body was covered in mud, his face full of wounds, traces of blood still fresh, his lips dry and cracked. He thought to himself, "When will the guests leave? My hands hurt so much, I hope they will leave soon." Then his stomach growled a few times. His focus shifted to his empty stomach. I am so hungry, he could no longer stay conscious. His awareness gradually faded in that moment. He also realized that, "My eyes are closing and my hands hurt so much," and just like that the scene grew blurrier and blurrier, his eyes slowly closed. Before completely losing consciousness and falling into a deep sleep, Yeon Jok Ha still worriedly thought, "But I cannot collapse. I will be punished if mother finds out." Thud, he lay on the cold ground, his small body subjected to extreme torment. He seemed to be lost in that vast, silent space. Perhaps no one would know if he lived or died. His long hair covered his eyes. His emaciated appearance made others feel pity. The silence was broken by hurried footsteps growing closer to him. He did not know who it was, only caught a glimpse of a valuable-looking robe and shoes. Could it be Baek Mi-ju? The mysterious person approached and then stopped before his small body. Perhaps awakened by the sound, Jeok-ha gently opened his eyes. He was utterly terrified, his eyes wide, as if seeing a ghost in broad daylight. He quickly scrambled up, profusely apologizing. I am sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry. I fell asleep without knowing when he quickly returned to his kneeling posture. Hands raised, high head, bowed low eyes, tightly shut in fear. A fear seemingly ingrained in his subconscious, tormenting his mind, both awake and asleep. It was pitiful for a child so young to suffer such cruelty from the person he called mother. The only words he could utter now were, I am sorry. He could only incessantly pray that the woman would show a little mercy and be gentle in his mind, were only fearful thoughts. I am so stupid I did something stupid and made Grandmadam angry again. This time she will not spare me. With no reply or the usual brutal beatings, Yeonjok-ha dared to open one eye to observe the other person's demeanor. A moment of silence, he froze for a few seconds, his long black hair and small earrings gently swaying in the wind. But that was not her. At this moment he realized he had mistaken the person. His eyes wide and sparkling as he looked at the person facing him, his face slightly flushed. The atmosphere also became brighter with gentle flower petals falling around. Before him now stood a young girl with a pure and lovely appearance, her sparkling pink eyes no different from a little princess. In the room, someone asked loudly and confusedly organize a wedding with the Nangong family, how the other person continued to question, Do you really want that, Yan? When he heard those words, the Nangong family's palace master was not angry. He laughed loudly. Ha ha, of course he delightedly continued to become in-laws with you is truly a precious thing for our family seeing this. Yeon Mugong also chimed in, Oh my, this is truly good news. I am sure my son will be happy to hear this. Immediately after Nangong Chunbaek asked him, What do you think? Without waiting for Yeon Mugong's reply, he asked another question, Do you want to become my in-law? He heard those two consecutive questions and calmly raised his cup, taking a sip of water, replying, I am truly grateful. Then he skillfully pushed the matter onto his son, but I think it is best for my son to decide his own marriage. Seeing this matter transferred to his son, Nangong Chunbaek was silent for a moment, then laughed and said, That makes sense too. With Nangong Chunbaek's consent, he then relievedly continued, Yes, that is right, as parents. We should not force our children into marriage. Then he concluded with a sentence, How can parents live their children's lives? His mother, sitting there upon hearing his words, immediately gritted her teeth and glared angrily at him, cursing in her heart. How foolish, then she reflected to herself. You two should just tell them directly that you feel regret marrying me. Then she continued to scold him. How dare you say such things? I have worked so hard for our family. Yet you are no help at all. In her heart she cursed bitterly. But on the outside, she maintained a gentle and benevolent demeanor, turning to ask Nangong Chunbaek, But do you think our children have feelings for each other too? Hearing that question, he laughed, Ha ha, replying, According to her wish, that is right. We will be meeting a lot more in the future, so let us take our time getting to know each other. Seeing that the other person agreed with her, she cautiously said, If so, I might have this intention. Then she directly asked, Can I ask you a favor? Nangong Chunbaek slowly replied, You may speak. A smile remained on his lips from the beginning. Given his consent, she did not hesitate. I hope the Nangong Chun family, as she spoke, her facial expression changed. The friendly smile disappeared, replaced by a dangerous glint in her eyes. She emphasized, We'll educate our son, Mu Baek. When she heard everything she said, the girl's mother was suspicious what my daughter she wanted her to clarify. What do you mean? Seeing the madam in a difficult situation. Nangong Chunbaek laughed to ease the tension. I am sorry, he asked her in return, but does not. The Yeon family also have powerful sword skills. Then he skillfully shifted the topic to someone else. Moreover, I cannot decide this matter. The boy's father, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. I also wanted to ask you for that favor. He bowed his head to the ground, speaking tentatively. If this is convenient for you and the Nangong Chun family. Then his voice turned urgent with a hint of sorrow. Then I hope you will help hearing those words. Nangong Chunbaek remained silent. After saying those words, he also fell completely silent, his face still bowed. Nangong Chunbaek, sitting opposite Yeon, watched him for a long time before speaking. If you say the word, I agree. Although he agreed, Nangong Chunbaek was still a little worried, hesitantly asking again. But will it be all right? He also asked another question. Is it truly all right for your eldest son not to inherit the Gucheon sword skill? Hearing him ask that, Nangong replied, My martial arts are not as difficult as the Nangong Chun families. He picked up the cup and continued to be sure Mubek has already memorized the Gucheon sword skill. Seeing his brother say that, he laughed and asked again, Ho ho, are you joking? Not waiting for Yon Mugong to reply, he kept talking 6 years ago. I personally witnessed you use the Gucheon sword skill to defeat Wol Haseonja with such a magnificent sword technique. Although I did not learn it, I still understand some of the difficulty of that sword skill. When he heard those words, the cup of water he was holding was placed back on the table. He tiredly said, Actually, he paused for a moment, then sighed and continued with my current condition. I cannot pass on that martial art to my son later. I will talk to you privately in more detail. He continued, So when you returned to Mount Wudang, before he could finish his sentence, his face suddenly changed. He coughed once, ku followed by a series of coughs. Ku ku. He coughed so much that he had to cover his mouth with his hand. Nangong Chunbayek saw his state and worriedly looked up at him. His eyes filled with extreme concern, then softly called Yeon. When he realized it, he panicked and called out his name loudly. Yeon! The cup of water in Yeon. Mugong's hand was even knocked over by his coughing. Nangong Chunbayek frantically shouted, Doctor, call a doctor here immediately. The room was in chaos. At this moment, he kept calling Yeon, wake up. At this moment, in a courtyard behind Waryeong Manor, Yeon Mubek was strolling alone. As he strolled, he turned left and right, thinking to himself, Mother told me to get close to young lady Nangong Chun Yeon, but he looked around and wondered, where is that young lady now? In a corner, there was a noisy conversation. Someone asked, Is it true? Then that person continued to ask, I want to ask one more question. He heard the noisy conversation and paid attention. He looked in that direction with confusion. In that corner, Yeon Seol-ju was happily tugging at Nangong Chun's robe, smiling sweetly and asking, Is it true that you have met your sworn enemy and killed him? Nangong Chun only chuckled, haha, asking in return who told the young lady that story. Hearing that, the little girl became even more excited and told Nangong Chun, I read it all in the novel. Then the little girl happily added, You are the azure cloud sword, the one who is ready to kill all enemies who dare to block his way. Nangong Chun was like an idol to the little girl, in contrast to Seol-ju's enthusiasm. Nangong Chun was completely the opposite. He gave an awkward laugh. Ha ha ha. It is true that my nickname is Azure Cloud Sword, but he denied the latter part of the story. But the parts about being ready to kill all enemies are not true. At this very moment, her brother, none other than Yeon Mubek, ran quickly towards them, shouting, Seol-ju! When the little girl heard her brother call her name, her face instantly fell in displeasure. He ran up to Nangong Chun and quickly bowed, speaking somewhat hurriedly on behalf of his sister. I sincerely apologize to you for causing trouble. Nangong Chun looked at him with bright eyes as if he had found a savior. Ha. This little girl did not bother me. Then he asked, Oh, that is right. What is your younger brother's name? Hearing that question, he immediately stood straight and respectfully replied, My younger brother is Yeon Mubek, before he could ask anything else. The little girl at his feet continued to tug at his robe. You know, my name. Do you? Before Nangong Chun could say anything, the little girl already spoke incessantly. My name is Seol. Ju Yeon, Seol. Ju, you must not forget it. All right. Seeing that he could only force a smile, he had been standing next to them and could no longer bear it. He angrily shouted, Seol-ju, do not be rude. Suddenly being scolded, the little girl retorted defiantly, I am being very polite. You are always nagging me. These two siblings argued like miserable people, and it was him, Nangong Chun, who stood there feeling extremely awkward. Hearing his sister say that, he became even more angry. It is very rude to ask someone if they killed their enemy. The first time you meet them, the little girl refused to refute. This is not the first time and he have already become friends. He saw that and immediately questioned the little girl. You just met him, and what friends? Do not be so unreasonable. The little girl was unwilling and clenched her fists, questioning him back. Do you know that thinking like that is narrow-minded? Nangong Chun stood there watching these two siblings argue back and forth, feeling utterly exhausted. These two continued to argue. He asked, "Why are you so rude?" The little girl unfairly retorted, "What, you were the one who interfered in my business." First, then she asked him back, "I had to travel a long way to make a name for myself in the martial arts world. You know, that do you." He stood there watching these two siblings as if watching a very interesting play. Then he thought of his own little girl. If Yon could always be a happy young lady like that, how wonderful it would be. These two siblings argued back and forth endlessly. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he looked towards Nangong Chun, his eyes filled with worry. Immediately realizing his impoliteness, he quickly used one hand to push his sister's head down. He also bowed and loudly said, "I apologize." Nangong Chun looked at him blankly and reassured him. "It is all right. It is good that she is always so cheerful and bright." He took that opportunity to ask, "Do you know where your sister has gone?" Then he stated his purpose. "I am looking for her, so we can get to know each other." Hearing that, Nangong Chun gave a faint smile and asked, "Back, you want to be friends with her? I am very grateful to you." Then he also stated his purpose for coming here. "Actually, I am also looking for her." Nangong Chun happily asked if, "So then let me introduce you two. You two do not know each other. Anyway, can we go together to find her?" Hearing that, the little girl became excited. "Yes, that would be great." Then the boy also asked, "Oh, that is right. I heard she cannot speak. Is that true?" When he received the little girl's naive question, he was extremely awkward, but still politely replied, It is not that she cannot speak." The little girl then continued to ask, "Really? Then what is it?" He knew his sister had accidentally said something she should not have. He turned to her grumpily. "You really are the little girl," ignored his words and trotted after Nangong Chun, chattering away. He saw that and lowered his voice. She has a hidden sorrow in her heart." Then he spoke truthfully. "I hope that after becoming friends with Mubarak she will get better." The little girl heard that and was overjoyed, comforting Nangong Chun. "Do not worry, let me heal her." The two had gone a long way, but he still stood rooted to the spot, then shouted loudly, "Yon Seol Ju!" At this moment she was walking to a place where the wind gently brushed through her hair, making both her hair and hand flowers flutter in the wind. Right now she had come before the boy who was currently being punished by kneeling. When she saw the girl, she wondered to herself, "Who is this young lady?" Then she marveled inwardly, so beautiful. Suddenly he realized, wait, as if thinking of something that is right just now. Remembering his mother's instructions, Mother said that an honored guest had arrived here. He looked at her attire and judged her clothes and jewelry are very elegant. She must be that guest. She still stood there looking at him unblinkingly. He was still lost in thought, but Mother told me to stay away from that guest. He was still being punished by kneeling. At this moment he secretly asked himself, "What should I do?" But subconsciously his body was extremely tense and trembling. He told himself, "I will definitely be punished." She continued to look at him without saying anything. He was now extremely tense and asked himself, "What should I do?" After a while, he put his hands on the ground. He ran away quickly in a hurry. She looked at him with confusion. Suddenly he fell backwards. He was quite panicked subconsciously. The reason he fell was because she had quickly flown over and grabbed the back of his collar. With a cold expression, she forcefully threw him to the ground. He looked bewildered, as if he did not understand anything, staring at her with wide eyes. She looked down at him with an arrogant demeanor, her face unchanging. Suddenly, a sincere voice rang out. It was his voice. "I am sorry. I am sorry. I am sorry." He kept lying on the ground, repeating the 3 words, "I am sorry." At this moment, she clearly saw his body. Although he was small, his body had countless scars. His appearance was extremely disheveled. She stood there silently watching him while he just lay there, continuously saying, "I am sorry." She stood there, her eyes scrutinizing him, wondering to herself, why does this person keep apologizing? She recalled that she only pulled him gently, and he could not even react. A question flashed in her mind. Does he not practice martial arts? At this moment he slowly propped himself up with one hand on the ground, the other covering his face. He seemed to be crying. His body trembled in spasms. She now looked closely at that small body and thought, judging by the bruises on his body, it does not seem to be from practicing martial arts. She looked at his frail body. It also did not look like he was well fed. She saw that red hair was exactly like the Duan Yue sword wanderer's. He must be his son. She looked at his frightened demeanor and wondered, there is something strange. Why is he so scared? Thinking that, she slowly lowered herself and sat down. Sitting next to him, looking at him with pity, he sat next to her, continuously sobbing, "I am sorry." Seeing that she began to gently lift him up with her hand, he still continued to say incessantly, "I am sorry." The boy looked at the girl, raising her arm, and stopped speaking, his eyes showing some fear, trembling incessantly. Her arm made him think of his mother. The closer her hand came, the more he trembled. His breathing also became much more rapid. She realized this at that moment. I understand her eyes now held a few parts of pity. The boy's breathing became increasingly rapid. His eyes filled with extreme fear due to psychological trauma. He remembered the scene of crawling miserably on the ground. He remembered his mother's disgusted face when she looked at him. He remembered his mother's sharp hand. All of it terrified him to the extreme. She sat down and reached out her hand towards him. With a hint of worry, he had never been properly cared for before. Under the twilight at a street corner, she reached out and caressed his head. He fearfully closed his eyes tightly subconsciously, as if waiting to be hit. But unfortunately, it was nothing like what he had imagined. It was just a very normal head pat. He looked at her in confusion, utterly bewildered. She softly asked him, "What is your name?" He looked at her and stammered, "Jeok-ha," then repeated once more, "Yeon Jeok-ha." Her hand continued to gently caress his head. Then she softly called his name once more, "Jok-ha." He opened his eyes wide and stared at her. She touched his face with one hand and told him, "I will protect you." That sentence startled him. He seemed to disbelieve reality, his lips trembling. He bit his lip. A stream of tears slowly rolled down. She saw him cry and was surprised, opening her eyes wide to look at him. He was now crying, loudly bawling, until snot also streamed down. She sat there watching him cry for a while. Then she gently placed her hand on his shoulder. He still kept crying loudly. Immediately, she hugged him tightly and comforted him. "It is all right." He still kept crying endlessly. She, at this moment, still holding him very tightly, comforted him in his ear. "It is all right." She hugged him for a long time until the sunset had completely fallen. Only then did she release him, stand up, and extend her hand towards him. She was like a savior standing before him at this moment. He had completely stopped crying, but there were still some tears in his eyelashes. He gently looked up at her. Then he reached out his small arm and grasped her arm when he held her hand. She tightly held his hand and ran in one direction, leading him to a small dog hole. He stared blankly at the dog hole as if not understanding what she wanted to do. She looked at him and smiled gently. Taking his arm, she sat on the ground. Immediately demonstrating for him, she slowly crawled through the dog hole, startling him. He stared intently in that direction, his entire body covered in sweat. Looking at the hole, which was now completely empty, her figure was nowhere to be seen. He began to open his eyes wide, his expression showing fear. Immediately after, she extended her hand through the dog hole, gesturing for him to crawl through. He slightly frowned and looked at that small hand. Then he also crawled through the dog hole after her. Both of them were now completely outside. Yeon Jok-ha was now being led outside to play by Nangong Yeon, holding his hand. It was now twilight. The two children had gone far, leaving Yeon family manor behind them. The sun gradually set. The sun set. Sky was fiery red. Gentle breezes softly blew. Yeon Jok-ha looked up at the high sky, his eyes wide and bewildered. He never imagined it would be so vast and beautiful. At this moment, before the boy, was the bustling city scene with people coming and going, a very lively and vibrant sight. These were things he had never known in the past 6 years. Suddenly his eyes were attracted by a food stall grilled meat skewers, placed over a fire, emitting a fragrant aroma, looking very appetizing. Yeon Jok-ha looked at them with longing eyes, but he only dared to silently crave them, knowing that he could not have such things. Nangong Yeon keenly noticed that expression. She looked at him and gave a benevolent smile. The little girl walked to the stall, took out money, and immediately bought 3 grilled meat skewers. Then she gave 2 skewers to the boy and kept only 1 for herself. Yeon Jok-ha took a large bite in his mouth, feeling incredibly happy. As the young master of the Yeon family, he had never tasted such a wonderful flavor in his life. Watching the child happily gobbling down each skewer of meat, Nangong Yeon also felt joyful, placing her hand on his head and caressing it affectionately. These gestures of care and affection were too unfamiliar to Yeon. He did not know what this meant, but only felt an unprecedented peace in his heart. He looked up silently at her. Nangong Yeon's face, the girl walking beside him, was beautiful and elegant, yet also gentle and benevolent. This was truly a rare moment of peace and happiness in the 6-year-old boy Yeon Jok-ha's difficult life. Suddenly, a tall, dark figure approached the two children. Young Lady Nangong Yeon turned back and looked coldly. A guard with a sword was approaching them. It turned out to be Yeon family soldiers, looking for the two. He revealed a terrifying gaze looking sternly at Jok-ha, making the boy tremble with fear. Young Lady Nangong, with her keen perception, understood the situation with just a glance. The little girl stood in front to shield him and took his trembling hands to reassure the boy. The scene shifts to the evening at Yeon family manor. Yeon Mugong began to regain consciousness. "Have you woken up?" Nangong Bayek asked. Yeon Mugong whispered, "I have probably caused you worry at this moment." He was lying on the sickbed without any strength. Nangong Bayek beside him said, "Of course, do you know how panicked I was? How could the Duan Yue sword wanderer end up in this state?" Yeon Mugong's face darkened. He blamed himself. "I am truly humiliated. I cannot even prevent myself from fainting. Stop talking nonsense and rest. You need to get better for the safety of your family and your children," Nangong Bayek gently comforted. Yeon Mugong still sadly said, "I once told you about my clan's secret sword technique passed down from Gucheon Hyun Nyo, right? But now I can no longer feel anything from Gucheon Hyun Nyo." He sighed. "Perhaps she is disappointed by my pathetic state." Yeon Mugong looked out the window, reminiscing the day she abandoned me was also the day Yeon Mugong died. He recalled earlier events, the day he returned and met his late wife in her last moments, which was also the day she gave birth to Yeon Jok. "Ha," he continued when she passed away. "She left behind a child who looks very much like me, but I did not dare to meet the child. I thought I hated that child. Even though I knew it was not the child's fault that she passed away, I am truly a pathetic man." He blamed himself. Seeing his brother, who once stood among the martial arts world, now only lying there speaking such pathetic words, Nangong Bayek could not bear it and interrupted enough. "I am not used to seeing your weakness." At this moment, Yeon Mugong began to heavily struggle to sit up. As he sat up, he said, "I have one last request. I hope you will help Yeon lie down. Do not push yourself," Nangong Bayek quickly reminded. With a gloomy look, Yeon Mugong softly pleaded, sounding like his last wishes, I know I no longer have the right to say this, but I hope you can take care of my children." "Brother, do not say such things," Nangong Chun replied. At this moment, Yeon Mugong, who had lived a proud life owing nothing to anyone, now dared not look straight ahead. He bowed his head. "They are all pitiful children who grew up without knowing their father's love. That is my first and last request. I hope my sworn brother," he said sadly, unable to finish his sentence. "All right." Nangong Bayek agreed. In that room, the man who was once the famous Duan Yue sword wanderer spoke out all his sincere words, entrusting his family to his trusted sworn brother. At this moment, at the Yeon family's gate, the two mothers were waiting for the children to return, their expressions completely opposite. While Madame Nangong was very worried, Madame Yeon displayed a grim and displeased face. The subordinate holding a torch walked in, leading the two children, and reported, "Madam, your subordinate has found young Lady Yeon." Madame Nangong rushed over. "Oh, my Yeon," she worriedly asked. "Where have you been?" While Baek Mi-ju was looking at Yeon Jok-ha with a cold gaze. "You are not hurt anywhere, are you?" Madame Nangong continued to care for her daughter. She suddenly realized her daughter Nangong Yeon was holding hands with a strange child. She was extremely curious and asked, "Who is this child?" But to avoid revealing anything bad without letting Yeon Jok-ha speak, Madame Yeon rushed over and screamed, "Jok! Ha, oh my God, how did you end up like this? Are you all right? You made me so worried." Then, she put on a worried face and began to show her acting ability, while her real son knew what would happen next and was trembling with fear. She looked up and put on a fake expression. "You must be Yeon. I was very worried when I could not find her all day. Thank you for helping me find her." In response to those hypocritical words, there was only Nangong Yeon's resentful gaze. Although the little girl was young, she was sharp and understood what was happening, radiating an overwhelming murderous aura that even Madame Yeon was surprised into silence. Suddenly, a loud, worried voice broke the tense atmosphere. Yeon's sister, it turned out to be Nangong Chun's voice. Nangong Yeon's brother and Yeon Jok Ha had also arrived at this moment. He quickly approached his younger sister and asked kindly, "I thought you climbed onto the roof again." Yeon's older brother saw his sister not respond and noticed the child beside her. He secretly wondered Yeon is holding this child's hand. Upon arriving, Yeon Jok Ha's older brother also saw Nangong Yeon. The boy froze when his eyes met her sharp, elegant, pure, and cold beauty. His face involuntarily flushed, but the boy could not yet understand what this feeling was. Then he was suddenly stunned when he saw before him the little girl was holding hands with his abandoned younger brother. Feeling a little uncomfortable, he stood silently for a long time. Yeon's older brother said, "Both of them seem exhausted. Let's go inside first, all right?" Madam Yeon replied. At this moment, the two children had to let go of each other's hands, and thus all the brief, happy moments Jok Ha had also came to an end. Madam Nangong urged them to go inside and rest. Nangong Yeon was still looking after Jok Ha, her face clearly showing worry. Although she knew something bad would happen to the boy, she could do nothing. Baek Mi-ju remained outside in the courtyard with Jok Ha and said, "We will be right in." The boy was now trembling with extreme fear as her hand began to tighten around his arm. As she watched the Nangong group, she spoke in a harsh tone, revealing her true nature. "I definitely told you to disappear, but you really want the entire Nangong family to know that your birth mother is actually your stepmother," she said, taunting the stepchild who could only stammer, I am sorry." After Nangong Yeon's terrifying expression earlier, she looked at the girls retreating back. Her face darkened menacingly, wondering, "But what is wrong with that bitch? Is she bothering me?" The Nangong family had gone inside, leaving Jok Ha in the middle of the spacious courtyard with his stepmother and servants. Who knows what would happen to him next? That July, Yeon Mugong passed away in his sleep. Immediately after her husband passed away, Mi-ju summoned 20 martial artists from her clan to join the White Tiger Manor to help protect and increase her influence in the manor. Those martial artists were known as the White Tiger Legion. Regarding the relationship with the Nangong family, around the same time, Mubek left the manor to train at Nangong according to the Duan Yue Sword Wanderer's wish. Of course, Baek Mi-ju became the new mistress of Hwaryong Manor. At this moment, in the outer courtyard of Hwaryong Manor, servants and guards stood in rows, waiting in the courtyard, while she was angrily searching for something, shouting loudly, "Where in the hell is it?" Inside the house, Madam Yeon family was frantically rummaging through her deceased husband's belongings, but could not find the secret manual of the Gu Cheon sword skill. The subordinate kneeling on the ground stammered, "Excuse me, madam." She glared and turned to ask, "Have you found it?" The servant bowed his head and replied, "We have searched all over Hwaryong Manor, but—" He stammered, looking up into her eyes, then continued, "We could not find any martial arts manuals left by the master." She furiously threw objects at him, yelling, "Impossible, I am sure he said something about those secret manuals. Please forgive me." The subordinate panicked and kowtowed, apologizing without the sword skill and being watched by the Nangong family. She angrily ordered the guards to immediately put everything related to Yeon Mugong into the warehouse. "They must be out of my sight." "Yes, madam, we will do it immediately," he quickly replied. Then he stepped out into the courtyard and relayed the madam's command. "Have you all heard? All members of the White Tiger Legion, except those outside, immediately gather in front of the courtyard." But as they were about to go to work, she suddenly called out again. "Wait, yes, madam!" He quickly turned back. Baek Mi-ju reminded him while arranging the belongings. "And also throw that scoundrel away. You know what I mean, don't you?" she ordered with a terrifying expression, implying to throw Jok Ha into the warehouse as well. Faced with this cruel act towards a child, even if not her own, it was too terrifying, making even the henchmen freeze for a moment in fear of this woman's heart. A moment later, near the warehouse, the boy's desperate cries for mercy could be heard. "Please spare my life. I am sorry. Please spare my life." The henchman dragged the boy to the warehouse and forcefully threw him onto the ground with a thud. "From now on, this is your room," he said. "Well, do not hate me too much. I cannot help it. I am just following orders." He also knew this was inhumane, but could not disobey the order. Then the warehouse door slowly closed, leaving only the 6-year-old child weakly begging on the ground. "Please spare me, even if you cry for help. I cannot do anything for you," he coldly replied. Then he smiled faintly and added, "At least you can be near your father's belongings. Consider it a memento that is a favor. Not everyone gets kid." The door closed. Jeok-ha said, "I should not call for help. Please save me." There was only darkness around. Inside the cold, dirty warehouse, old items piled up. Suddenly, a chilling gust of wind swept through, making Jeok-ha feel a little afraid, as if something behind him, deep in the darkness, was watching the little boy. The boy recoiled but could not escape. Huddled in a small corner, he thought to himself, "I am so scared alone in the dark." Jeok-ha wondered how long he would have to stay in here. The next morning, when the sun rose, the sun's rays began to shine down on the ground, piercing through the crack in the door, shining down on Jeok-ha's frail, pathetic body. He was awakened by the sound of a door opening, but it was just the sound of a cat flap opening. A hand was pushing a small tray in with only a rigid bun and a bowl of water to sustain him. The boy began to crawl towards the food tray, wondering if he could eat it. "I am so hungry." The boy took a small bite, chewing in his mouth. Looking at the rock-hard bun in his hand, it was not delicious at all. Thinking it was already hard to swallow, he suddenly discovered a corner of the warehouse glowing. "What is that?" Jeok-ha wondered. "Did something just flash?" Curiosity urged him to put the bun down and go see. The boy thought to himself, "It is daytime now, and I still have enough courage should I go see." The light grew closer. The boy summoned all his courage and flipped open the wooden board blocking the front. The strange, glowing object was revealed. He discovered a large mirror covered in dust there. He stared blankly. "So it is a mirror." He moved closer to observe it carefully. "Is this all dust? I cannot see clearly." He did not think much, intending to use his sleeve to wipe it clean. "Let us see." The mirror gradually became cleaner. Jeok-ha clearly saw himself in the mirror, feeling himself to be small and pathetic. His miserable appearance made him freeze for a long time. "You are also abandoned, are not you?" he said to his reflection in the mirror, as if talking to himself. Suddenly the boy felt something was wrong. He was clearly wiping the mirror with his hand, but the shadow in the mirror was acting differently. It was as if it was tilting its head to observe. Suddenly, his image in the mirror broke into an incredibly happy smile. The boy was startled and recoiled in fright, screaming loudly, "Save me!" But even with his desperate cry, the guard outside still yawned carelessly. Seeing a seasonal wind, he said, "Has winter arrived? The weather is getting colder and colder." The cold winter had arrived. Snow began to fall outside, were the sounds of two guards chatting. "Do not you think it is even colder now than before? Me too. This weather is not good for children at all. Has not that boy been imprisoned for 2 months? Is he still alive?" One stammered. He even wrapped in a fur coat was shivering with cold. If he froze to death, it would not be strange. The accompanying guard replied, "He is still alive. Did not he just scream?" "Are you sure?" the short man doubted. "Sure. And the food we bring in every day is always gone too," the other man replied, before such strong vitality of a 6-year-old boy in the biting cold, which made the guard respect and exclaim, "Oh, truly, the blood of a martial artist is different. If it were me, I would have frozen to death long ago. That boy is truly resilient." The accompanying man coldly held up a bag of food and said, "So what, he will die soon? Anyway, his rations have also been cut here." He pondered for a moment, looking towards the warehouse, saying, "Prepare to clean up his body." Inside the warehouse was windy, and with only a thin set of clothes, Jeok-ha was curled up, trembling from the cold. While the shadow in the mirror still happily played tricks, seeing scaring the boy as entertainment, Jeok-ha, with an empty stomach and the bitter cold, no longer had the strength to fear that monstrous thing. He told it, "Are you trying to distract me? Cannot. You stand still. I am not afraid of you anymore, understood? Honestly, I no longer have the strength to be afraid. I feel like I am about to freeze to death," he continued. Seeing the boy curled up in a corner, trembling and waiting to die, Jeok-ha in the mirror also stopped joking. It was silent for a long time, then it sighed in exasperation. It looked around for something. Then it picked up the stick next to it. It raised the stick and waved it, beginning to practice martial arts in front of the boy. Jeok-ha was also attracted by this sight and looked up. Jeok-ha saw the person's movements were very strange. The boy wondered, "What is it? What is it doing? Why is it suddenly dancing?" But then he told himself, "Tisk, never mind, it is none of my business." Jeok-ha recalled the first time he met the person in the mirror. At first he was a little surprised, but it seemed it could not escape the mirror, so now he was no longer afraid. The boy guessed that it was acting that way because he was not paying attention to it. But the other's technique was incredibly impressive, keeping his eyes glued to the figure in the mirror. Each strike was incredibly powerful and graceful. The more he looked, the more familiar it seemed. The boy wondered, do not those movements look very familiar? Suddenly the image of the person in the mirror performing sword moves, and the image of Jeokha's brothers practicing sword in his memory appeared. These two sword techniques were extremely consistent. It was the same sword technique. He suddenly realized Gucheon's sword skill. I remember now, I always watched my seniors practice martial arts. That must be the Gucheon sword skill. How does it know our clan's martial arts? Jeokha wondered. But this suddenly sparked an idea in his head. If one could properly use the Gucheon sword skill, then a martial artist would be able to circulate internal energy in their body and generate yang qi. Being able to generate and maintain that yang qi was the first step of the Gucheon sword skill. The teachings from his eldest brother's master, which he often overheard while sweeping the courtyard, now appeared in his mind. That is right, he seemed to have discovered something. If I remember correctly, even in winter, the seniors could generate a flow of yang qi to envelop their bodies. This could help ward off the cold from outside. Thinking that Jeokha also picked up a stick and clumsily mimicked the movements of the person in the mirror. However it moved, the boy did the same, seeing it strike down. He also struck down, but it was just like flailing wildly. The little fellow in the mirror also observed the boy's actions, displaying a disdainful expression at his awkwardness. Seeing it scrutinize him, Jeokha said, "Do not worry, I am not doing it because I want to." But inside, he thought differently anyway. With this cold, I will die anyway. What choice do I have now but to follow it? He decided to stake all his hope. If these movements are truly the Gucheon sword skill, then at least I will survive this cold season. But for someone with no martial arts foundation like Jeokha, he quickly lost his balance while trying to imitate and fell flat on his face. This made the person in the mirror chuckle gleefully, pointing and teasing. Jeokha, both angry and embarrassed, grumbled, "You scoundrel!" A moment later, the weather outside was still very cold. Snow fell blanketing everything. Inside, Jeokha was still diligently practicing his sword movements gradually becoming more graceful and powerful, each step also becoming steadier. He could already feel it himself and learned to imitate the person's movements. Jeokha in the mirror leaned on a stick, observing like a teacher, letting the boy repeat the movements himself. Its gaze was stern, seemingly displeased. Jeokha stopped to rest, panting, dripping with sweat. He no longer felt cold. He happily thought to himself, "I did it. I do not feel cold anymore." He realized that when he learned these movements, a flow of yang qi was generated. It warmed his body. And if I keep it up, I will be able to survive without worrying about anything else. At this moment, I could see a flow of yang qi surrounding Jeokha, looking very much like a martial artist. But this sight did not please the person in the mirror much. It continuously expressed its dissatisfaction in its eyes. Achieving only this much understanding was nothing. It picked up the stick and raised it. It took a stance, radiating a surging true qi, as if wanting to tell the boy that he needed to work hard to reach this realm, so much so that even through a mirror one could feel the strong pressure, but for the boy being able to dispel the cold was enough happiness. Jeokha told it, "I do not need to do that much. I do not want to imitate your movements either. I just want to warm myself up." Jeokha expressed no intention of continuing to practice, throwing away the stick in his hand, and continued anyway. "I do not need to survive anymore that way. I do not have to see you bother me. So now I will flip the mirror over." These words displeased the person in the mirror greatly. Seeing him turn away, it began to perform sword movements again. But unlike before, its sword techniques gradually became more mysterious. Making Jeokha attracted, he unconsciously turned back to look. All movements were being displayed at a different level. Graceful movements, powerful sword strikes. He watched in admiration, unable to tear his eyes away. These techniques were even completely different from the sword techniques his brothers practiced. "What is that? I have never seen these movements before. Wait, do not tell me it is not teaching me the Gucheon sword skill," he suddenly realized. Then Jeokha questioned its actions. "What are you doing? Do you think I will be interested in that?" "I am not interested in martial arts." The boy still refused to learn martial arts. You think I will do those difficult movements?" Faced with his stubbornness, the person in the mirror said nothing, only showing a scornful face and a mocking smile to provoke him being ridiculed. Jeokha was annoyed and uncomfortable. Although he said he did not want to, he picked up the stick again, wanting to prove himself against the provocation. The boy took a stance, boldly saying, "How dare you do that? You think I cannot do it? I will show you again, you scoundrel." The boy began to swing the stick again, under the observation of the figure in the mirror. Who knows how much time had passed? A cold winter had passed. The snow outside gradually melted, warm spring sunlight filled the air, plants stretched out with vitality. At this moment inside that dilapidated warehouse, Yeon Jok-ha was performing sword techniques that were now more graceful and powerful than before. His face was intensely focused, his breathing steady internal energy and drops of sweat testifying to his efforts. It is really difficult, much harder than the previous movements he was thinking, as the difficulty of the sword techniques gradually increased. And also, although I can somewhat follow, but looking at the figure in the mirror, the one who possessed the sword technique he was trying to pursue was demonstrating supreme skill. Jeok-ha felt a little discouraged. No way, I could never do that. Although he hated being mocked, he still did not know what to do. He was helpless. Every time he performed poorly, he was ridiculed, but he himself was too inferior. Jok-ha showed annoyance, dropping the stick and slumping down. I do not care anymore. How on earth can I do those movements? At this moment, his stomach also seemed to protest further, diminishing his will to practice. I am so hungry. Why do I have to try to do this? He began to think about what he had been doing lately. The boy felt he had no reason to learn at all. It was useless. It did not help at all. But it is cool, even if it is useless. I still want to learn. His mind was full of contradictions. He also wanted to be that strong. Looking at the figure in the mirror, he could only sigh at his limited ability. Why can I not do it? Those movements are difficult to perform. But compared to the 9 movements of the Gucheon sword skill, they are somewhat similar, though. But just harder. Is this martial art even more powerful than the Gucheon sword skill? He mentally reviewed those 9 movements and silently wondered. Recalling the times he secretly watched others practice, he had never seen his seniors practice these movements before. This martial art is definitely related to my clan, so why does it know it? He was extremely puzzled, looking at the figure in the mirror, unable to hide his curiosity. He directly asked, "Hey, are you intentionally omitting some movements? I am doing exactly what you are doing, so why can't I do it?" Seeing the boy start to get interested, the figure in the mirror smiled smugly. Seeing that only made Jeok-ha more annoyed. What a petty person. All right. If you are playing tricks, I will not bother looking at you anymore. I am not going to learn. Saying that, he discontentedly covered the strange mirror as a punishment for the figure's mockery. Perhaps the figure in the mirror only wanted to tease for fun. It did not want to be alone. It bent down to look at Jok-ha through the gap in the cloth, displaying a compromising expression. What are you doing? Are you going to teach me, Jok? Ha! Asked the figure this time. It was not mocking, but gave a kind smile and nodded. Agreeing, really. Jok. Ha asked again. Do not lie. Otherwise I will cover this mirror again. The boy uncovered the curtain again, not forgetting to threaten like a childish game. The figure in the mirror said nothing, raised a finger signaling the boy to look up. Jok-ha also blankly followed. Looking up in the indicated direction at this moment, on the mirror were countless characters carved by true ki shining brightly. Jok-ha was astonished, speechless. What is that? What does it want me to look at? At this moment, what caught his eye was the inscription, Gucheon Hyun, Nyo Il Sik Gyong. Does it want to show me this? Gucheon Hyun, Nyo Il Sik Gyong. So the truth has finally come to light. The one in the strange mirror is actually Gucheon Hyun Nyo, whom his father, the Duanyue sword wanderer Yeon Mugong, once learned from, and later he himself lost his connection with her, and she is also the one who holds the secret manual that Baek Mi-ju has been searching for. In an instant, hundreds of characters appeared on the mirror of Gucheon Hyun Nyo. Jok-ha was captivated following those characters. Standing before the great mirror, this was the martial arts secret manual that dominated the world Gucheon Hyun Nyo Il Sik Gyong, even though the content was extremely difficult and complex. But Yeon Jok-ha felt as if the words were flowing in his mind, and he realized that the martial art he had been following, Gucheon sword, he had buried himself in the Yan family, and lived an unfortunate life, intentionally locked in a warehouse until death. The emotionless, cold guards who were ready to obey orders and abandon him, the cruel stepmother with the venomous heart of a beast, but that misfortune. Gucheon Hyun Nyo Il Sik Gyong. Once again, he stood up after falling, but this time it was different. That situation helped him change his destiny, meeting Gucheon Hyun Nyo Il Sik Gyong, and his fate changed completely from then on. Then another spring arrived. A child whom everyone confirmed would die had begun to change the lost martial arts secret manual of Gu Cheon's sword skill because Yeonmu Gong had died. But now it was being taught slowly but surely. At this moment, Jeok Ha was concentrating on meditation. His hair had grown too long after many years of imprisonment. The true ki radiating around him, though pure, was powerful. Time is fair to everyone. Jeok Ha opened his eyes after meditating. In an instant, he struck out, cutting through the air with a beautiful sword stroke without a single wasted movement. Thanks to being confined in the cramped warehouse, Jeok Ha was able to focus on practicing Gu Cheon 9 swords. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Jeok Ha was now a 16-year-old youth. Though slender, he exuded powerful internal energy, his posture steady. After that sword stroke, he smiled happily. Finally, I have performed the movement accurately. At this moment, from outside, a carriage was approaching Nakyang City. Soon it moved towards Yon Family Manor. The carriage stopped right at the entrance, the door swung open. A nimble figure jumped out of the carriage. Has 10 years passed already? The person who just disembarked said with some emotion. Mu-bek, my son, seeing the familiar figure Madame Yon family, suddenly rushed out from inside the house. You have grown into such a strong young man, I missed you so much. Oh, brother must be back. Oh, really? The 2 younger siblings also rushed out of the house joyfully. It turned out that the person who just arrived was Yeonmu Baek, who had finished his 10 years of hard training at Nangong family and returned to Waryeong Mountain Manor. He cupped his hands respectfully and greeted Mother. I have returned after 10 years of hard training. I am very proud of you. You are very good. Miju praised him effusively. She rushed over and hugged her son joyfully, saying, You truly have a noble aura. Perhaps now the Yon family has become the strongest clan in Nakyang. No, the strongest in Henan province. Oh my. I am so happy I did not pay attention to anything. Are they not honored guests from the Nangong family at this moment? She noticed the 2 people from Nangong. I apologize, it has been a long time since I saw my son. So that is why. She quickly realized that Nangong Chun had now become a renowned figure in the martial arts world. Now you are even stronger than before, Chun brother. You are truly amazing in the martial arts world now. Who does not know true human sword? And also, she looked at the girl in the distance that was Nangong Yon. The little girl of yesterday had now become a beautiful woman, radiating a noble aura, still with those sharp eyes as before. Young Lady Yeon, I no longer recognize you. Whoever stands next to you is like a wilting flower. Baek Mi-ju praised effusively. You must be tired after such a long journey. Let us go inside and rest. I have prepared many things today. Oh, that is right. Are your fathers still well? Nangong Chun happily replied, Yes, he is still well. Baek Mi-ju immediately smiled obsequiously and said, That is truly fortunate. Saying that, she looked at Yeon and asked, But Nangong Yeon, what are you looking for? Seeing his sister leave without a word, Nangong Chun angrily scolded Nangong Yeon. How can you be so rude? Baek Mi-ju put on a kind face and smiled. It is all right. It seems the young lady's illness has not been cured yet. I am very worried about her. Nangong Chun scratched his head awkwardly. Actually, she is doing better than before now. I am very happy to hear that everyone must be tired. Let us go inside quickly. She waved her hand, urging them. Then everyone went inside. Baek Mi-ju deliberately slowed down. As she passed the guards, she glared and ordered you. The guard startled in fear. Yes, madam. She coldly reminded him, relay the message to all the servants. Make sure no one is allowed near the warehouse. That arrogant girl is probably looking for Jeok Ha. She looked at Yeon, who was wandering around as if searching for something truly stubborn. 10 years have passed, and she still remembers him. The guard stammered, actually. I do not know if I should tell the madam about this last night. I went to check the warehouse because it was too quiet. I went to check the warehouse. He hesitated, but young Master Jeok Ha is no longer there. Hearing the shocking news right in the middle of welcoming honored guests, her face distorted, revealing a terrifying expression. She grabbed the guard by the collar and questioned him again. What are you saying? Tell me the details immediately. One day before the sun began to set over Nakyang City. In that dilapidated warehouse, just like every day, true ki flowed throughout the room. Jeok Ha was still diligently practicing, still with high concentration in every breath. His sword slashes became increasingly powerful until he completed the final sword strike. The items in the warehouse were now in tatters, chaotic fragments. Nothing could remain intact in this dilapidated warehouse. For the past 10 years, All were traces of his arduous training. Jokha happily cheered in celebration. Finally, I succeeded. I finally managed to do this movement. It was really difficult. Saying that, he turned his head to look at the person in the mirror, smiling happily, showing off to it. You saw it too. Right, the movement I just performed was truly perfect. The boy in the mirror, who had not grown at all over the years, also smiled and applauded in approval. Jokha ran over chattering like two small friends after memorizing the 900 characters on the mirror that you showed me before I was able to surprisingly overcome the part I felt was difficult. He eagerly wanted to learn more. Hey, he teach me the next martial art. But he suddenly paused. Something felt very strange. The boy in the mirror smiled, pointing his finger upwards. Look at the ceiling. Why, Jokha wondered. Unbeknownst to him, a large hole had been torn in the ceiling, allowing sunlight to stream in. Jokha was stunned for a long time. He did not know how long it had been since he had seen the sun. He was so surprised that he even dropped the stick in his hand. The figure in the mirror also happily admired the sun with him, for Yeon Jokha, a person who had been locked in a cramped warehouse for 10 years. The sky he saw for the first time after 10 years was incredibly beautiful. He jumped onto the pile of old items, moving closer to the hole. Bringing his face towards the sunlight, admiring the sunset, he exclaimed happily, "It is so warm. Can I go out?" He wondered. The boy in the mirror gently nodded in agreement. Jokha glanced at the figure in the mirror. The nod seemed to give him courage. Then he carefully looked at the vast sky outside. He grabbed onto the hole in the roof and began to climb up. The moment he escaped from the dark warehouse, countless feathers gently fell down. Jokha looked up around him. Pigeons were freely soaring in the distance. Was the picturesque scenery of Nangong city in the sunset light. These ordinary things were too luxurious for him. Jokha involuntarily exclaimed, "It is truly beautiful." The figure of the child in the mirror at this moment also gradually disappeared, replaced by the figure of a benevolent woman, hands clasped as if blessing the young man. Faced with such a magnificent scene, Jokha did not forget to share it with his confidant in the mirror. He called out into the inside, "It is incredibly beautiful. Come up and see this. Come see with me." At this point, he fell silent. When he could no longer see the familiar figure in the mirror concerning the sudden disappearance of the confidant who had shared his joys and sorrows for so long, he was utterly stunned. But then Jokha clenched his teeth. Perhaps he already knew this would happen. He understood that fate had allowed him to meet that figure, granted him the Gu Cheon sword skill, and now fate itself wanted him to begin a new journey on his own 2 feet. Sitting on the roof, Yeon Jokha gazed at Nangong city, both familiar and strange. His adventure would truly begin now. Back in the present, after hearing the servant's account, Baek Mi-ju rushed into the storeroom to verify the matter. Aside from the desolate, ruined scenery, no one was in sight. She scanned the ceiling, her gaze falling on a large hole in the roof. Her heart full of questions, she asked the guards, "The roof has a hole? Was it struck by lightning? But how could it get up there?" A guard suggested, "How about we send someone to search for him, madam?" She calmly dismissed the idea. "No, don't bother. Why should we go look for an ungrateful wretch who abandoned the sect that raised him?" She clenched her teeth in her heart. She thought, "Fool you. Think things will be different once you're outside. You're just a 6-year-old child in an adult's body. You don't even know how to make a living and survive. You'll soon starve, get sick and die alone indeed." After years of confinement, Jokha knew nothing of the outside world at this moment. He was happily and eagerly wandering the crowded streets for the first time in 10 years. Meanwhile, Yeonmu Baek, who had likely known, came to Baek Mi-ju and asked, "Mother, has my brother, Jokha, truly left home?" She laughed loudly without a hint of worry. "That's right. It seems he left 3 days ago. Mother sent people to search everywhere for the past few days, but they couldn't find him." He expressed his concern. "But Jokha has nowhere to go, does he?" The mother began to fabricate a story to reassure him. Surely, after hearing that senior brother had successfully returned, he also wanted to be like that. You can't know what others are thinking. "Is that so?" Mubarak still felt somewhat dissatisfied with the answer, his eyes gazing towards the door. Nangong Yeon was standing observing everything, her attitude extremely displeased. "Junior sister, why are you here and not resting?" The mother seemed a little worried when Yeon-ni appeared unexpectedly, especially as the young woman was radiating an incredibly intimidating aura, her eyes seemingly seeing through everything. Mi-ju quickly stood up and approached, smiling as if nothing was wrong. "Oh my granddaughter, you came here worried about Jiok. Don't worry too much. People often say that children this age usually leave home to explore." Yeonni didn't bother to reply to the mother, focusing intently on the room. She looked around the room in her heart. She thought she analyzed the surroundings he left home 3 days ago, but the blankets and pillows aren't dusty like new items. In contrast to the clean blankets and pillows, the room looks like it hasn't been cleaned in a long time. This room certainly isn't occupied. Grasping the situation, seeing through Baek Miju's charade, she turned and walked away without a word, leaving the woman still speaking falsely behind her. Currently, our Hwa Ryong side is actively searching for Jeok Ha, so don't worry too much. Junior sister Mubek shouted after her, but she kept running. Yeon Madam suppressed her anger, clenching her teeth, her body trembling as if she wanted to tear the girl apart and say, "That child is always so disrespectful. How much does she despise me to act like this?" Having lived in the Nangong family estate for a long time, Mubek somewhat understood Nangong Yeon's actions. He remained silent for a moment, then spoke. "Mother, did my brother truly leave home on his own, or did something happen?" Seeing her silence, he asked further, "I've never seen junior sister act like that without a reason. The one who comprehends feelings and reason is the nickname everyone calls junior sister." He began to recount. Junior sister is someone who always understands others' thoughts with a smile as bright as a flower. Once junior sister is curious about something, she will definitely find out the truth. Some even say that even if you pretend to be a ghost or a demon, you cannot deceive the one who comprehends feelings and reason like her. He now believed that if someone like that acted this way, there must be a reason. Seeing that even her own son suspected her, she clenched her teeth in anger. "Why? Why do you doubt your own mother like that, huh?" Mubak hesitated, unsure how to explain. "It's not like that. It's because junior sister left without a reason. But did something really happen to my brother?" Yeon Madame didn't want to discuss this matter anymore. She walked away and said, "Don't think too much. He doesn't live here." "But it's true he ran away?" Mubayak asked in surprise. "Mother said my brother doesn't live here." Since when, with a wicked smile, she recounted he never got to see his father's face, not even once. "So I mercifully let him stay with his father." Mubayak truly couldn't fathom the evil deed his mother had done. He asked blankly what. Then, as if realizing something, he frantically ran off, thinking to himself, no way. He rushed through and slammed heavily into the storeroom door. The door was already open. Nangong Yeon was standing inside, having been there all along. Mubarak asked in surprise, how could junior sister find this place? He stepped inside, gently calling junior sister. Yeonni began to voice her suspicions, although this is the most remote part of Hwaryongwon Manor. There are many guards here, as if there's something they don't want I to see. Standing before the damp, dilapidated storeroom, she said, "But now, looking at this place, I understand why Madam kept it so well hidden." She affirmed the storeroom is dark and damp. The floor is cold and old, yet he was only allowed to wear rough clothes. It looks messy, as if a demon was locked in here. Having said that, she resolutely stated, "I must inform my father," not forgetting to remind Yeon Mubarak, "Brother, you are my father's disciple, so you probably won't spread any rumors, but the relationship between our two sects can no longer be as it was before." Having said that, Yeonni coldly turned and walked away, passing by a stunned Mubarak. "I will return to my senior brother." Mubarak was as if frozen by the truth. Before his eyes, he didn't know what to do in this situation. He had no words left to defend or excuse his mother, nor did he have the right to stop Nangong Yeon. Clenching his hands, he thought now, Hwaryongwon must live in fear, constantly watching Nangong's next move. What should I do to salvage the ruined relationship with my esteemed master and junior sister? At this moment, the city had begun to light up, bustling with people, a truly lively scene. Jeok Ha walked barefoot, admiring the streets. He exclaimed, "Oh, everything has changed so much. How long have I been living in that storeroom?" He walked along the streets and a small alley with shops lining one after another. He became disoriented amidst this crowded city. "There are so many shops here, I'm completely overwhelmed." He was flustered. "There must be a way out here, right? Or should I just go up the mountain and run? I just want to visit a little." While not paying attention, Jeok Ha bumped into a man. He awkwardly turned around. "I apologize. Great hero, are you all right?" The man turned back angrily, cursing, Damn it, how annoying. Open your eyes and watch your step, kid. Jok Ha could only awkwardly bow his head. Yes, I apologize. Suddenly he widened his eyes in surprise, suddenly realizing this person looked very familiar. Images from before flooded his mind. This person was a guard swordsman of Hua Ryong, the very one who had thrown him into the storeroom. Jok Ha, seeing this, was frightened and turned his face from him, then walked quickly. I'll be careful. I'm leaving. Just a few steps later, the man suddenly spoke. Wait, I feel like I know you, Jok. Ha heard that, his heart filled with dread. The man then said, Hey kid, I think I need to check your identity first. Jok Ha was utterly confused, his heart pounding. Have I been discovered? What should I do? The man saw that he didn't react and shouted with even more suspicion, Hey, didn't you hear what I said? Remembering the long years of miserable captivity in Hua Ryong 1, he resolved not to be caught again. Jok Ha told himself, No, I cannot return to the storeroom. He secretly resolved I must continue to travel the martial world. Thinking this, he ran very fast. The other person, seeing him run away, became even more suspicious. What's wrong? He just kept shouting, chasing after him. Hey, you scoundrel, come back here right now, he yelled across the entire street. Jok Ha ran, his eyes darting around trying to find an exit. There must be an exit this way. I cannot let myself be caught. A moment later, he ran to the city gate. Jok Ha rejoiced when he saw the exit before his eyes. He cheered, Oh, here it is. I must run as far as possible. I will go so far that no one can find me with that thought. He sprinted at full speed towards the exit, despite the dense crowd hindering him. The Hua Ryong 1 soldier on this side also sprinted after Jok Ha. He was extremely angry. I have never seen such a disrespectful brat as you. He dares to run away from a Hua Ryong 1 swordsman. He chased, pushing aside those blocking his path, shouting loudly, Hey, you bastard, if I catch you, you're dead for sure. After all, he was a martial artist recruited by Hua Ryong 1. His stamina was not ordinary. Jok Ha ran, looking back, and couldn't help but admire. He runs too fast at this rate. I'll be caught. I'm sure I'll be dragged to see the Grand Madam too. No thinking this. He grew even more anxious and poured all his strength into running. The man ran very fast in a flash. He was almost there. He roared, I'm warning you one last time. But Jok Ha just kept his head down and ran, darting past the guards, all for his freedom. He was determined. I will never go back to that storeroom. I don't want to be scolded by the Grand Madam anymore. Jok Ha ran near the city gate. A guard shouted a warning, Hey kid, come back here. The iron gate is closed. But those words couldn't stop him. Jok Ha darted through. He was joyful in his heart. I did it. I ran through the gate. Just when he thought he had escaped, the Hua Ryong 1 swordsman also caught up. He stood towering, blocking Jok Ha. Hey kid, you think you can escape me? He leaned down, his expression threatening. Tell me, seeing you run desperately like that, you must have committed some crime, right? Even though he had closed in, the boy was determined. I cannot be caught. Having said that, Jok Ha darted past the swordsman, leaving him no time to react. He angrily cursed, You dog, how dare you say that? Then the man furiously pursued, determined to teach the boy a lesson. But suddenly the iron gate from above crashed down. Making him surprised and unable to react, he screamed. He instinctively put out his hands to brace himself, accepting his fate. But strangely, the gate stopped right there, not touching him. At this moment, the image of a slender, small young man stood proudly before him, one hand holding up the tons-heavy iron gate, kindly asking, Are you all right, great hero Han? The swordsman was dazed, unable to believe his eyes, seeing him speechless. Jok Ha worriedly asked again, Great hero, are you not hurt anywhere? The man, now frightened, his face gentle, stammered out a reply, Oh, I'm fine. Jok Ha then breathed a sigh of relief, innocently saying, Thank goodness I just didn't want to be caught. Hearing Jok Ha say that, and witnessing his extraordinary strength, his attitude suddenly changed. He awkwardly said, Aha, who's catching you? Who's catching? I, of course not. I was just chasing you. Jok Ha innocently heard that and beamed with joy, asking again to confirm, Really, great hero, you won't catch. The swordsman dared not protest further and quickly replied, Of course not. Jok Ha again smiled brightly, Lol, then I must have misunderstood something well. Goodbye then, he happily bade him farewell and released his hand. Letting the iron gate crash down, the sound of the gate crashing was incredibly terrifying. certainly not something an ordinary person could easily lift. He turned and ran very fast. The man sitting inside the gate looked out, still unable to fully recover. Who was that kid? Am I dreaming? He sat there frozen, looking after Jeok-ha, who was innocently and happily running and singing, beginning to contemplate. It's true that the Janghu has always said not to underestimate children, women, and the elderly. That saying seems to be accurate. Jeok-ha kept running, rambling through the mountains until it was almost dark. He began to grow tired, wandering in the forest, searching for food. I haven't eaten all day. I'm so hungry, I wish I had something to eat. He was now staring intently at a brightly colored mushroom, hesitating. They say eating everything found in the mountains is very dangerous, but after a brief moment of hesitation, the young man with the intellect of a 6-year-old easily succumbed to hunger. I can't continue to starve. He hastily picked a mushroom the size of his palm. Looking at the mushroom with a longing gaze, he reassured himself, I'll be fine. The color of this mushroom is beautiful, and it looks delicious too. Night fell. The moon had risen high, round, and bright. Jeok-ha walked stumbling step by step, his legs growing weaker. With each moment he felt dizzy, and slowly sat down at the base of a tree. What's happening? My stomach hurts so much. Everything before his eyes seemed to spin, the path looking more and more unsteady. My head kept spinning. He said in a daze, This is bad in the darkness. It will be even harder to see. What if some wild beast appears on the mountain? What should I do? Jeok-ha worried as his body grew increasingly tired. I must find a place to sleep as quickly as possible, my eyes. But he couldn't hold on much longer. Thinking this, Jeok-ha could no longer stand steadily. He collapsed to the ground, his body exhausted without a shred of strength, but he still tried to cling to a faint consciousness, telling himself, I can't just sleep like this. This is terrible. Then the world before his eyes went dark. Jeok-ha had lost consciousness. Who knows how long after? Suddenly a man's voice cried out, Oh my goodness, you startled me. What is this, a corpse? It's morning and I'm already so unlucky. Then another man's voice rang out, Brother, my younger brother once said he was tired of cooking and washing dishes. Should we take him with us? The other man retorted, Are you saying we should take this scary person with us? The first man explained again, Life and death depend on fate. I mean, we can use this to accumulate merit. Do you know? For sure will our lives in the future be better? The younger brother still tried to persuade, discussing karma. The older brother said impatiently, You and your merits. Just because you lived in a temple for a while, you keep talking about it. At this moment, Jeok-ha gradually began to vaguely see the two people before him. They still continued to discuss this guy. Isn't he almost dead? The older brother then leaned closer to observe more carefully. The short-haired younger brother said nothing, just glanced at his complaining older brother. Then he asked with difficulty, It's hard to tell, but he's still breathing. What should I do? The other person coldly drew his sword. He held the sword to Jeok-ha's neck, thinking he would mercilessly strike. But no, he used his sword to poke the boy. He grumbled, Damn it. How annoying. Take him in. This is the first time we've encountered someone even more ragged than us. The subordinate, having convinced his big brother, rejoiced, and said with a smile, That's a good choice. This is all merit. Judging by his appearance, he must have begged before. So if we save his life, he might be able to make a living on his own right. The older one asked again, But how many members do we have? We only have 6 people. The bald man replied in a daze. Everything to Jeok-ha was like a dream. He vaguely heard their conversation and then drifted back into unconsciousness. Only their murmuring voices remained. They were still discussing. All right, then we won't go completely bankrupt just by letting him share our money. The voices kept echoing in Jeok-ha's ears. He dimly heard their words. In his mind he wondered, Where am I? Jeok-ha suddenly saw a figure like a celestial maiden. The scene before him was extremely ethereal. The woman's face was very similar to Gucheon Hyunyo. He asked himself, a celestial being. Hearing his innocent words, she laughed and replied, a celestial being. Stop muttering such foolish things. Suddenly, Jeok-ha woke up with a start, opening his eyes wide. He struggled to sit up, then heard someone ask, You're completely fine, aren't you? You can even talk in your sleep and stuff. He looked up in confusion. Standing before Jeok-ha was a large, muscular man with a fierce face. He continued to ask the boy, You were just wandering around, weren't you? That's why I found you collapsed on the mountain road. If it weren't for us, you'd be in the belly of one of the wild beasts on the mountain. Jokha knew these were the people who had saved him. He hesitated and replied, "Thank you, sir, but where is this place?" He clearly replied, "This is our hideout on Mount Wufeng. We are mountain bandits." Jokha now saw his surroundings more clearly. There were 6 men, all a bit dusty and rustic in appearance. They were all here as if waiting for him. The bald man nodded as if to say, "At least you can realize that, right?" Jokha Innocent didn't know if mountain bandits were scary or not. He just obediently said, "I apologize." The bald man approached happily, introducing himself. "All 6 of us here are sworn brothers. I'm second brother, Tak Go Myung. Third brother, Ma Hyung." A shaggy-haired man also smiled and introduced himself. A bearded uncle also said, "Fourth is I, Her Imdal, by the way. In his state, he probably won't remember his own condition. I'm the leader." Pong Yoncho, the initial grim-faced scarred brother, chewed and said, "This person is the leader of the Wufeng mountain bandits," he said, "because we saved your life. From now on, you should repay us little by little." Jeokha didn't understand what this meant, and innocently asked what repay. Pong Yoncho held the half-gnawed bone in his hand, pointed at the boy and said, "That's right, you fool. I don't know if you've ever begged for scraps outside, but here you must sincerely study and work to repay the one who saved your life." Fourth brother saw these words were a bit harsh, so he turned to remind him, "Oh brother, why are you pushing the boy so hard?" But Pong Yoncho didn't pay attention and continued to preach. "People say that even animals will repay your actions. If you save their lives, he cannot be inferior to animals." Old Fourth, appearing to be the kindest, tried to dissuade him again. "Brother, that's enough. He's just a kid who just regained consciousness." Then he held a cake and gently offered it to Jeok. Saying, "You must be hungry now. First use this to fill your stomach." He stared at the cake in his hand, his face surprised since birth. Outside of the Nangong Yon family, no one had ever offered him food so kindly. Jok, looking at this kindness, couldn't believe it. He hesitated a bit. "Can I eat this?" In Ha's eyes, these 6 fierce bandits were actually very endearing. Though they seemed rough, he felt they were good people to him. But he was still shy and didn't dare to accept their kindness, waving his hands frantically. "No, I'm fine. I'm not hungry at all." The older brother then turned to the leader and retorted, "You're lying. Your stomach was growling even when you were asleep." Jokha honestly replied, "That's right, but I have no money." And Pung Yon Cho waved away his words, "I won't take your money, so eat indeed." That was what the boy was truly thinking in his heart. He dared not believe that someone would give him food for free. "No, I truly have nothing to give you, sirs." So the leader saw that the young man's words didn't match his body at all. He thought, why does he speak so clumsily like a child? Yun Xiao asked, with some suspicion, looking at second brother. "He looks at least 15 or 16, second brother. There's no way he's truly mentally deficient, right?" Second brother happily laughed and said, "Oh, elder brother, even if it's true, we can still give him some odd jobs. Before the boy's attitude, he thought he seems like a good kid, so I think he'll do well. The boss still had some worries. He doesn't even know how to find food, so how can he be good? He's just a fool." He had a bit of a prejudice against beggars and added, "And those accustomed to begging tend to play all day, so they don't want to work." Having said that, he boldly walked over, grabbed Jokha by the collar, who was still bewildered, and dragged him along, saying, "There's nothing else to do, come with me." Seeing this, the brothers began to complain as if this happened frequently. "Oh no, our elder brother is at it again," they called out. "Elder brother, since you're going to teach him a lesson anyway, do it properly." Jeok, being dragged away, panicked and flailed his limbs, shouting, "Oh, what's wrong? What are you doing? Wait, let me go." Jokha was dragged out to the courtyard and thrown with a thud onto the ground. The boy felt a little pain, already used to being treated harshly. He just raised his hands to shield himself, trembling as he begged for mercy. "I truly have nothing." Peng Yoncho looked at the boy's frightened and panicked expression, bewildered, and said, "What are you doing? I didn't intend to kill you, you fool." He speculated he must be used to being beaten elder brother in this state. "How do you plan to gather wild vegetables?" Surprised by the big brother's words, Jokha tremblingly asked again, "Wild vegetables, why me?" The boss, seeing that he didn't understand, irritably explained, Why? What do you mean by why it will prevent you from becoming food for wild beasts? If you join us, you won't have to worry about starving." Hearing that the boy understood, he shyly said, "But someone like me, a mountain bandit. I can't become someone like that." The boss grew more irritated, clenching his fist and growling, "What kind of foolish things are you saying?" Jokha bowed his head to the ground, replying with the inferiority he had long carried, "I don't have strength and I'm not good at anything." Jokha's words made Peng Yoncho extremely angry. He lost his composure and shouted loudly, "I have never seen any scoundrel more infuriating than you are. You going to reject the way of life I'm trying to teach you, just because you're scared?" Peng Yoncho continued to explain loudly, "In this world, there are two types of people. Those who take from others, and those who constantly suffer losses." He stood pointing directly at Jokha, who was cowering, and shouted loudly, "Which side do you want to be on?" Jokha naively asked, "What do you mean?" Peng Yoncho repeated in a rough, crude tone, "I'm asking if you want to continue living in this hunger and hardship. Do you really want to continue living hand to mouth and being ignored by everyone?" Jokha could only remain silent. He had never dared to think about the future, or how he would live as long as he was full and warm. It was enough, a child who had never known joy. Now he felt awakened. He needed to know what he wanted and how he would live. He could no longer live the days of being abandoned and looked down upon as before. Jokha replied, "No, I don't want that. I don't want to be ignored anymore. I don't want my things to fall into the hands of others." The boy said, clenching his teeth, expressing his desire, "If I had to choose, I'd rather be someone who takes from others than someone who always suffers losses." Peng Yoncho heard these determined words from Jokha and laughed heartily. "Ha, good, that's the right way to think. Look behind you, Jok. Ha!" He turned his head to look in the direction he pointed. Yon Xiao continued from the first mountain on the left over there to the fifth mountain in front of us. "That's a part of our territory. It's vast, isn't it?" the boss asked, looking up at the majestic, sprawling mountains below. He hesitantly replied, "Yes." Then the leader continued, filled with pride, "We are the rulers of Mount Wufeng. No one here can ignore us." Those were the principles these mountain bandits followed. Peng Yoncho lowered himself to Jokha's eye level and placed a hand on his red hair, continuing to speak to the boy in a much softer, gentler tone. "You too, kid. If you become a part of our family, then in the Wufeng mountain region you too will be a ruler." He smiled and asked, "What do you think? Sounds cool, right?" Jokha looked at the majestic scenery before him, thinking about the things he would be able to do when he became a mountain bandit here. A little happiness in his heart. He replied with wide eyes, "Yes." The elder brother, successfully enlightening the boy, was delighted and laughed heartily. "I knew you'd like it now. You are the seventh brother of the Wufeng Mountain Brothers. What's your name?" "Yon Jok." "Ha," he replied. Hearing this name, the boss thought for a moment, then quickly said, "Jok. Ha, that's a good name before joining our family. There's one thing you must remember. Listen carefully, remember it well." Peng Yoncho took a deep breath, getting ready, then stood majestically and shouted loudly, echoing throughout the mountains, "Even if the sky falls, we are still the best." Having said that, he laughed heartily and looked towards Jok. "Ha, hey, youngest, you should say it too." "We are the best!" The boss once again shouted very loudly, demonstrating a childish, funny, seemingly meaningless phrase, but it ignited excitement and optimism. In that moment, for the first time in his life, Jokha felt excited. The excitement like a neural stimulant spreading throughout his body. His stepmother always cursed him, and his brothers never paid him any attention, just like that hellish storeroom. All those painful memories of the past flashed through his mind. That feeling was as if something that had been frozen in his heart was shattering into pieces, falling from his heart. It felt as if he had been struck by lightning from head to toe. The things that bound his unhappy life before were being unbound. Jokha slowly stood up. This new desire to live had awakened the slumbering Gu Cheon spirit. Jokha took a deep breath, faced the vast mountains, and shouted loudly, "Even if the sky falls, we are still the best." His voice carried immense release. Even the big brother was somewhat moved. The shout sounded as if he was releasing everything that had accumulated within him, tearing through the mist and echoing throughout Mount Wufeng, like marking a new beginning in Jokha's life. Witnessing that powerful voice, Peng Yoncho approached and patted the boy's shoulder, praising him with a laugh. "Ha, well done. I like it very much. You look skinny, but your voice is quite good." He said to Jok, Ha, if I only make you do chores, it would be a waste, so I will teach you martial arts when I have the chance. Jeok Ha was overjoyed and quickly replied, Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Pong Yeon-cho then instructed, but first learn how to do chores around the house by going around with sixth brother, because your body is still weak, so at least you must do household chores properly. Understand? Jeok Ha excitedly replied, Yes, elder brother, I will do my best. Pong Yeon-cho was surprised by Jeok Ha's way of addressing him and said happily, Elder brother, haha, I see you adapt quite quickly, don't you? Thank you, elder brother. Jeok Ha replied obediently. Just like that, Jeok Ha's life in the mountains began first. He learned how to survive daily life, following fourth brother up the mountain to learn survival skills, recognizing poisonous mushrooms and edible wild fruits, listening to them share stories of life hunting wild animals, although Jeok Ha was quite immature compared to normal people his age because he had been locked up for 10 years. But thanks to the mountain bandits on Mount Wufeng who took care of him like their own brother, Jeok Ha was able to quickly open up and adapt to his new life. Each day passed peacefully here. His daily life was basically perfect. Of course not. Every day was peaceful. There were days when the brothers returned covered in injuries. Their martial arts skills were quite low, because most of the mountain bandits on Mount Wufeng came from commoner families, so they were used to getting minor and major injuries whenever they went on patrol. However, they were always optimistic and cheerful about the small spoils they gained. A few jars of good wine, fun parties where they drank themselves silly, finding happiness in the small things of daily life they lived and enjoyed every day. In this place no one considered Jeok Ha an outsider. The brothers cared for him very much, although he was born into a famous swordsman family in Nakyang. Jeok Ha, who had lived a tragic life being tormented for being the son of a concubine. Ironically, only after becoming a mountain bandit could he feel happiness for the first time in his life. Then one day, the entire group of mountain bandits were respectfully bowing to someone. He asked the leader, Pong Yeon-cho, This matter is quite troublesome. I came here to find a group of mountain bandits. But don't these look more like a group of beggars? Two strange individuals stood speaking in a condescending tone. The whole group could only bow their heads and listen. Cheong Rim. This is the name of a group of robbers who cover their faces and carry weapons. The robbers chose this name to appear noble, so they have been ridiculed by the world for a long time. But then one day, a truly powerful man calling himself Cheong Rim, the bandit general, appeared. He alone killed a fox. When news of him began to spread, a series of martial artists from large Chokbang sects wanted to subdue him, but no one succeeded as his reputation and strength grew. He was called the heaven-shattering demonic god and was considered one of the strongest masters in the martial world. The evil faction had been suppressed for a long time. Very happy when he appeared, he took them in and made Cheong Rim stronger than ever. Cheong Rim's reputation grew steadily and became the dream of all mountain bandits and evil martial artists. Those mountain bandits and martial artists each wanted to come to Cheong Rim, bowing and kneeling respectfully, begging, Please, sir, please accept us into Cheong Rim. In Cheong Rim there was a deputy leader, the bald-faced beggar Yom Sang-cheol from Mount Daebyol. He looked at the bowing and begging people with great displeasure, frowning. You want me to accept you, the voice of Cheong Rim's deputy leader, the one-eyed blood bandit Lee Jung-an from Mount Daebyol. He looked down at the person kneeling at his feet, his face somewhat angry, and said loudly, Hey, Pong Yeon-cho, do you think Cheong Rim is a joke? Lee Jung-an really disliked this person. Every word he spoke humiliated others. He opened his mouth and shouted a bunch of failures. Not even 10 of you can join. Pong Yeon-cho still bowed, wanting to extend the deadline with Lee Jung-an. Just 3 more people, we just need 1 more month to recruit that many. 3 people, my foot. Lee Jung-an couldn't help but curse. Again, he pointed at Yeon-jok Ha and said 4 more. He's a child, Yeon-jok Ha knew he was being talked about and looked up blankly. Pong Yeon-cho didn't want to go to the trouble of finding people. He turned to Yeon-jok Ha behind him and said, he looks like that, but he's very useful. He knows how to do household chores. Before he could finish speaking, Lee Jung-an cut him off. Pong Yeon, I told you, you need 10 more people who can fight. Lee Jung-an said loudly, That's just talk. It's never enough. Do you know how big this area is?